Hello, Lothar here, PCT THRU hiker. It's 2022 now, so Happy New Year. Hope you had a good Christmas. This video is really about the kinds of things I was just resolving or finalising for my THRU hike this time last year when I got my permit, and I'm guessing a lot of you are going to be going through the same process. Now the first thing, as I've mentioned in a previous video, the number one thing to do is just sort out your gait. Are there any corrections you need to do in the way you walk? Now, most in your normal life, you'd never need to worry about it. If you're going to do something that's going to last 100 to 150 days and you're on your feet all the time, then there's a good chance you might need to just check out if you need orthotics. I did, and after I'm 55 now, and hiking since I was 10, I never needed orthotics in the first 45 years. So when I did the THRU hike, yes, I've realised I need to get that corrective orthotics. So certainly look into that. You need the time to build up your body getting used to them before you hike. It's not easy to get orthotics whilst you're on trail, or sort them out anyway. So hike before you hike, my motto. Get some blisters. You'll be amazed at how many people think you can put on a pair of shoes and not get any blisters. You're going to be hiking hours, you're going to be sweating, you're going to get blisters. Get a large majority of them now. If you try and do the hike without doing any sort of sustained hiking beforehand and you start the PCT, your feet are going to get shredded in the first 2 weeks, and it's miserable if you do that. So definitely get some blisters on your shoes, on your feet. Your skin will harden up, and your first couple of weeks will be that much easier. You will get new blisters because you're going to be sweating a lot more in the desert, but the vast majority of the work in terms of hardening your feet, hopefully you already have done before you start. Now, in terms of shoes, one of the things I found very helpful was, rather than I actually changed out all the laces on my shoes, and every time I bought a new pair of shoes because they're worn out, I would put lock laces in. So they're basically elasticated, so it's LOC laces. I'll put a link in the description, and they just basically are very easy to slip your shoes in, so your feet into your shoes and out. And I use them religiously all the way through the hike. I wouldn't go back to laces, traditional laces, and tying knots every time. So anyway, that helped me get my feet dialed in, get my shoes dialed in. Now, things like other gear. So you obviously want to wear your backpack. You obviously want to see where you're going to get sore points. You're going to get sore points likely around your hips. You're going to get some sore points probably around your straps. Again, get them over with. Get your body dialed into that. Don't have that problem on the first couple of days or maybe first week or so in trail. Your body needs to get used to that kind of that wear, if you like. In the same way, you've got your other gear. Now, you want to get used to setting up your tent. Obvious, okay? You don't want to be thinking, how do I put up my tent on the first day? Just obviously get out there, put it up a few times. Know if you need to orientate it in a certain way in wind. As I said in the previous video, I broke tent poles and I got that wrong. But again, you can probably find out how many pegs you need. You can maybe get away with one less peg. But again, practice makes perfect. Do you want a tent footprint, or do you want a Tyvek sheet? I use a Tyvek sheet to protect the bottom of my tent. Never regretted it, and my tent lasted the whole THRU hike. So again, get those things sorted. When you go to your sleep system, now, have you settled on a quilt, or have you settled on a bag? If not, I think people are constantly asking questions about temperature ratings. Now, over the years, and in different countries I've lived in, sometimes you find that the ratings, the rules they're supposed to match, but 20-degree Fahrenheit bag, I would use maybe a synthetic one when I used that in Europe, and when I used a 20-degree down bag in Europe, I had different experiences. In the same way that you can buy synthetic quilts and down quilts, you can buy synthetic bags and down bags. Now, obviously the down stuff is more expensive, but it's lighter. I would look at, if it was me, and I'm just giving you advice, I would look at down equipment as a long-term purchase. So I've got gear, I've got 3 down bags, I've got 2 synthetic ones, and I've got 2 quilts. Again, this is over the years. My down ones always have lasted longer, but I've always consistently looked after them. So I've always valued the fact they're lighter. I've always valued the fact that they feel generally warmer. If I look after them, they last. I've got a mountaineering sleeping bag which has an E-vent coating on it, which is basically breathable. It's high quality down. I would never use that on the PCT, but I made the decision that as a down, high quality, I will use that in a specific circumstance, and it's a lifetime purchase, so I'm going to look after that bag. My quilt, I got a 10 degree down 950 fill in light equipment quilt, and I didn't regret it, and I looked after it, and I washed it after I finished my PCT, and I wouldn't say it's as good as new, but it's pretty damn close. I looked after it. I put it in a nylon flume bag. I made sure it stayed dry. I used the booties on my feet to make sure my dirty feet didn't damage or dirty the inside of my quilt. So I tried all these things. So if you're concerned about the rating of what gear to get, try and buy down if you can afford it, if your budget allows it. Synthetic ones, if you're accepting the fact it's going to get wet, my first question is, why are you accepting things are going to get wet? Keep them dry. Synthetics just take a little bit more beating. They can take more abuse, if you like. So when I was younger, as a kid, I was growing up, my family always bought, as kids, when we were camping, we had synthetic bags because my parents knew we probably wouldn't look after them. But once you graduated onto down, you never go back. So I've got gear, so whenever I go camping or hiking, I always reach for my down gear. Same thing with jackets. I've got a puffy jacket, I've got a mountain hardware Ghost Whisperer. You can get lots of other brands of synthetic and down. My Ghost Whisperer lasted the through hike. I use that for section hiking. I've got a down coat puffy which I use for when I'm going at high altitude. I think that's 15 years old and it's still, I wouldn't say as good as new, but the puffiness is fantastic. You can look after them. You will look after it, and it will serve you well if you can look after them. When you're sleeping, obviously you've got to define your pad, and against that, if you're going to use a quilt, you have to get that combination just right. You have to trial and error on that. And again, I mentioned that I had a few problems on trail. I just couldn't get a good night's sleep, and it took me a while to sort out the pad I wanted. Do you want a pillow? And that sounds trivial, but actually, I had a pillow. I should have mentioned in my previous video, I had a lightweight pillow. I think it was an XPED one, EXPED. There are lots out there, but just try it. Now's the time to just play with it and try it, even if it means just trying it on your on your living room floor and just seeing if the pad system works well. And can you get your quilts straps tightened up? Because if you're new to quilts, that can be a little bit frustrating. You can get drafts coming in, and particularly if you're cowboy camping, you really need to dial that in quickly. So a lot of time in deserts, you might be tempted to not put up the tent, but just cowboy camp. And it is lovely to do. You see a night sky, but you can get drafts into quilts if you haven't got that practiced well. And it does take a while. It took me a good couple of trips to get my quilt draft free, if you like. I kept feeling drafts around my side. My quick solution for that was actually to have my puffy jacket underneath my quilt, so between me and the quilt, and I'd shove that. So if I felt a draft, I'd shove my puffy jacket. I wouldn't wear it. I just use it as a sort of a blanket, a mini blanket, and shove that into the draft area. That's a quick way of solving it. Other things to try now: trekking poles. Now, when I started hiking, we never had trekking poles, so I never used a trekking pole. Over the years, I started using double trekking poles. Now, I could never really get into the process of using the straps and putting just amount of weight on just right, such that I could be very efficient on trekking poles. I had lots of friends who could, and they loved it, and they swear by it. I tend to use poles as just purely for stability, and make sure I don't fall over. But it's almost like just maybe giving me a little bit of boost. But I didn't like using the straps because I had a couple of experiences where I got the pole stuck and I wrenched my wrist, and that's thereafter I kind of just used them as stability and helping getting up hills. I also tended to favour using just one pole for quite a long time. And I actually started the PCT with just one trekking pole, and then I think after the Sierras I switched to two poles, and I didn't go back. But again, I didn't use the straps. But again, you'll find a balance that will work for you. But now's the time to try and play with it. Cooking systems, right? People ask questions about what stoves you use and what size pot do you use. Well, the size pot actually determines how stable your cook system is. So if you have it too top heavy, guess what? It's going to fall over. Now, I was very fortunate. All through the hike, I had a system whereby I used a pocket rocket. I could use a very small gas canister without the tripod suspension you can have. You can buy the little stabilizers. I didn't use that. I had a small gas canister, I had a pocket rocket, and I had a 900 milliliter Toaks pot. For me, if I went any bigger, I found when I filled it, when it's cooking, it was too top heavy, and it tended, this is when I was section hiking. So for my through hike, I actually used the 900 mil, and it never fell over once. But I was careful. Just so happens I finished, and 2 weeks ago I was on a section hike, and for the first time in a year my pot tipped over, and the balance wasn't just right. But I think the 900ml for me was just right. I could get a bowl of water, but I was the sort of food for a solo hiker that kind of worked well for me. If you're going to be hiking in couples or anything like that, or you want more bigger pot, you might want to consider having the stabilizing things if you're going to use the small canister, the little plastic stabilizers that clip onto the back of the bottom of a canister. I found the small canister and the 900ml pot was kind of a nice balance. If I went slightly the other way, it became too top heavy. But again, try what works for you. Meals, obviously, just try some meals. I kind of liked having every so often the treat of some Mountain House ones. There were certain ones I liked, but I also used lots of pasta sides. I also used some sort of made up meals as I was going through resupply towns. But occasionally I would like to, on a resupply, I would just like to know what I'm going to get, because you never go in some towns. You always have to compromise on what they have on, and sometimes the selection might be limited. But equally, if potentially there's a good big season of hikers, it might just be sold out, or it might not be in stock. So yeah, if you have certain things you like, then don't be so afraid to have a couple of resupply boxes. Obviously try and send them to stores rather than post offices, so you have a wider option on pickup times, so you're not tied by the post office pickup times. The other thing, as I mentioned before, is that people use like olive oil and things like that to add to their foods to boost calories. And I said that for me personally, I tried that and my stomach couldn't get used to the oil. I just had just a bad stomach reaction to the excessive oil, so I couldn't use that. So again, now's the time to try it. See if you can do that. And lastly, just for this section of the video, your electronics. Obviously, you want to get your electronics. You want to set it up. You want to download all your apps, particularly with Guttup Safari app, or if you're using another one. You can download maps, but remember to download the offline maps as well. Now, in particular in Orthotics, I would recommend using the topographic maps. Now you have to go into the settings, and you'll see an option there for offline maps, and you can download the topographic maps. And you have to do that for each section of the PCT, certainly on Orthotics anyway. And that kind of gives you the sort of contours you see on maps like this. Which I think these are the kinds of booklets you can buy now for the PCT. I'll come on to that in a moment. The other electronics I would play with were headphones. Now headphones, I tried various types. I had a certain type that went hooked over my ear, and I found them really good. I actually had a second spare set in my spares box. They were waterproof, and I think they were for jogging, for running, because I found that the small ones just fell out of my ears. I needed that little extra clip over my ear. I could clip one over my ear and have the second one loose, so I could actually clip it in here, so I could I could hear my surroundings. And I love the fact that they were Bluetooth. Their battery was really good, surprisingly good. And when inevitably I crushed one of them accidentally, I trod on it, I had the spare set all ready to go, exactly the same type I knew I liked. So if you can afford it, probably get a spare set headphones in your spares box. Certainly the ones you like. Battery packs, I used a 10,000 milliamp hour battery pack, or charging pack, and I matched that to a plug-in charger. I'm going to be testing a few more chargers, maybe 30 watt, and some of these gallium nitride plug-in chargers, so I can see if I can speed charge my battery packs. And I'm in the process of testing that as well. That means you can limit your time in town, so you don't have to be sitting in the cafe for hours and then waiting for your battery pack to charge. Also InReach, if I've got one here, if you've got the InReach, if this particular one, which has the full GPS systems, is fully independent of your phone, has the maps, you can download the maps, PTC specific maps. I did that, play with that, set up your account such that you can send messages to your friends and family, play with it, and also play with the tracking. You don't want to be messing out, you actually want to get that dialed in. If you're going to use tracking, which will eat your battery, but obviously if that's what you want to do, it takes a little bit. It's a bit fiddly, but set it up, and I think it's even more fiddly on the Mini. But yeah, once you get it set up, you've got time to do it. So, and you can play with it. Right, I'll stop there for the moment. The next section of the video is going to be on some of the other activities I would do in terms of preparation. So yeah, I'll stop here and see you in the next video.